Welcome back. Every single day, millions of American coins change hands. A quarter for a cup of coffee, a dollar dropped into a vending machine, loose change forgotten inside a pocket. Most people never stop to look because to them, a coin is just money. But what if one ordinary-looking coin has been hiding a secret for decades, not because it's made of gold, not because it's ancient, but because of one tiny detail almost nobody notices. Today, we're uncovering 3 American coins that have quietly passed through millions of hands. In 1997, Washington quarter, a Bicentennial quarter with its famous drummer boy and a Susan B. Anthony dollar. Each one tells a different story. Each one carries a different mystery, and one of them may already be sitting inside your change jar before you spend another coin. Watch carefully, because history doesn't always hide inside museums. Sometimes it hides inside your pocket. Let's begin. Coin number 1, the 1997 D Washington quarter. At first glance, it looks completely ordinary. George Washington faces left. The eagle appears proudly on the reverse. The edge shows years of circulation. The surface may be dull, scratched, even dirty. Most people would spend it without a second thought, and that's exactly why so many remarkable discoveries are overlooked. Because collectors have learned something most people never realize. The oldest-looking coin isn't always the oldest. The dirtiest coin isn't always the least valuable. Sometimes, the most ordinary coin in a pile becomes the one everyone wishes they had examined first. Now imagine opening an old cookie tin. Inside, hundreds of forgotten coins, nickels, pennies, dimes, quarters. Nothing organized, nothing labeled, just years of spare change. You begin sorting through the pile. One coin catches your eye, a worn 1997 quarter. Its silver color has faded. The edges are smooth. It looks like it has traveled across America, one pocket at a time. Most people would place it back into the pile. A collector would do the opposite. They would hold it beneath a bright light, turn it slowly, study every detail, because they know every coin tells 2 stories. The story everyone can see and the story hidden beneath the surface. To understand why this quarter still fascinates collectors, we have to go back to 1997. America was approaching a new century. The United States Mint was producing millions of Washington quarters every single week. Powerful presses struck blank planchets with incredible force. Thousands of coins every hour, millions every year. Every quarter was expected to look exactly the same. Perfectly centered, perfectly struck, perfectly finished. But machines never stay perfect forever. Steel wears down, pressure changes, working dies slowly age, and sometimes without anyone realizing it, tiny differences begin appearing. The first clue is often so small that most people never notice it. Now take your 1997 D Washington quarter. Look beside the date. Do you see the tiny letter D? That single letter tells you this coin was struck in Denver. Now examine the word Liberty. Then, in God we trust. Look slowly, not quickly. Do any letters appear thicker, slightly doubled, or unusually sharp compared to the rest of the design? Then move toward Washington's hair. His ribbon, his queue, every engraved line was created by a steel die. If that die began changing, the coin recorded every tiny detail forever. Now flip the quarter over. Look at the eagle. Study each feather, each wing, each letter surrounding the design. The reverse often preserves clues that rushed eyes completely miss. One raised line, one unusual mark, one tiny feature could tell the story of a die that was nearing the end of its life. Collectors know these clues matter, not because every unusual mark creates a fortune. but because every genuine mint-made variety begins with someone asking one simple question: what if this coin is different? That single question has led to some of the greatest discoveries in American coin collecting, and what collectors eventually learned about certain 1997 Washington quarters made thousands of people search through old change, one coin at a time. Changed everything, not overnight, not with a newspaper headline, not because the United States Mint made an announcement. It happened quietly. One collector noticed something unusual, then another, then another. Each discovery looked almost insignificant: a tiny raised line, an unusual letter, a small difference in the strike. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would catch the attention of an ordinary person. But collectors don't think like ordinary people. They know history often hides inside the smallest details. Now imagine yourself sitting at an old wooden table. A lamp shines across dozens of Washington quarters. Most look exactly alike. Same date, same mint mark, same design. You pick up the first coin. Nothing. The second, nothing. The third, still nothing. Most people would stop right there. Collectors keep going because they understand something important. The next coin could be completely different. Now hold your 1997 Washington quarter under a bright white light. Tilt it slowly. Watch the reflection move across Washington's face. Every shadow reveals another detail. Look at his forehead, his eye, his hair ribbon, the back of his neck. These tiny details were engraved into a hardened steel die. Every strike copied that die with incredible force. Thousands of times every hour, millions of times every year, but steel doesn't last forever. Every strike placed enormous pressure on the die again and again, hour after hour, day after day. Eventually, the surface began changing. Tiny cracks appeared. Microscopic chips broke away. Small polishing marks developed after mint workers prepared the dies for continued production. Every one of those changes left clues behind, clues that still exist today. Collectors don't just collect coins, they collect those clues, because every clue tells part of the coin's journey. Now look carefully at the word, liberty. Don't rush. Study every single letter, then move toward. In God we trust. Do any letters appear thicker? Do they seem slightly different from the others? Sometimes. The difference is almost impossible to notice until you compare another quarter beside it. That's exactly what experienced collectors do. Comparison reveals details that memory never can. Now flip the quarter over. The eagle stands proudly with outstretched wings. Look closely at every feather, every line, every claw, every olive branch. Most people only see a picture. Collectors see thousands of engraved details, each capable of revealing another part of the story. Imagine one feather appearing weaker than the rest, a tiny raised line crossing another, an unusual lump near the rim. Is it damage? Maybe. Is it dirt? Possibly. Or did it leave the mint exactly that way? That single question has inspired collectors to search through millions of quarters because sometimes the answer changes everything. Think about how many 1997 quarters have passed through American hands. Cash registers, gas stations, restaurants, movie theaters, school cafeterias, parking meters. For more than 25 years, these coins have traveled across the country. Most eventually became worn, scratched, darkened with age, and that's exactly why important details become easier to overlook. People assume an old-looking coin has no value. Collectors never make that assumption. Some of the most interesting discoveries come from coins nobody wanted, coins hidden inside forgotten jars, coins inherited from grandparents, coins sitting untouched inside old coffee cans for decades. Now imagine opening one of those jars. Hundreds of quarters spill across the table. You begin checking them one by one. Minutes become hours. Nothing unusual. Then suddenly, one quarter refuses to look ordinary. The strike appears unusually sharp. The surfaces look different. A tiny raised feature catches the light. You compare it against another 1997D quarter. They're not exactly the same. Now curiosity takes over. You examine it under stronger magnification. Every detail becomes clearer. What looked ordinary only moments ago now raises new questions, questions that deserve answers. This is why experienced collectors never hurry. They know patience often discovers what speed overlooks. A single extra minute can reveal something hidden for decades, and sometimes that hidden detail becomes the reason a coin is remembered long after millions of identical-looking quarters have been forgotten. But the most fascinating part of the 1997D Washington quarter isn't how many were made, it's how many people never really looked at one, because the greatest mystery has never been finding old coins. The greatest mystery is how extraordinary details can remain hidden inside ordinary pocket change for an entire generation. Next up is the 1776-1976 United States Bicentennial quarter, the quarter with the famous drummer boy on the reverse. At first glance, it doesn't look mysterious, it doesn't look expensive, it doesn't even look unusual. Most people simply notice the dual date. 1776, 1976. Then they put it back into their pocket. But experienced collectors never stop there, because this coin carries a story, unlike any other Washington quarter. To understand why, we have to travel back nearly 50 years. America was preparing to celebrate its 200th birthday. 200 years since the signing of the Declaration of Independence. It wasn't just another anniversary. It was a moment the entire country wanted to remember. The United States Mint decided to create something special. Instead of changing only the date, they created an entirely new reverse design, a young colonial drummer standing proudly beside a victory torch, surrounded by 13 stars, a symbol of the original colonies. Millions of Americans immediately recognized the design. Children collected them. Families saved them. Banks handed them out by the thousands. For many people, it became the first special coin they had ever owned. But here's where the story becomes interesting. The Mint produced hundreds of millions of bicentennial quarters. Philadelphia, Denver, and special collector editions from San Francisco. Most entered circulation exactly as intended. Most are still worth only face value. But hidden among those millions are coins that continue to attract collectors decades later. Not because they shine brighter, not because they are older, because tiny differences changed everything. Now, take your bicentennial quarter. Hold it under a bright light. Don't look at Washington first. Turn the coin over. Look directly at the drummer boy. Study every detail. The drum, the drumsticks, the uniform, the victory torch, the 13 stars. Every line was engraved with incredible precision. Every strike copied that design using enormous pressure. Thousands of coins every hour, day after day, month after month. But something always happens when production reaches that scale. Machines begin wearing down. Working dies slowly change. Tiny imperfections begin appearing. Sometimes those imperfections become part of the coin forever. Now examine the drummer's drumsticks. Do they appear perfectly sharp? Look at the torch flame. Notice every tiny line, then study the lettering around the rim. Every letter deserves attention. Collectors know the smallest detail often tells the biggest story. Now, look at the edge of the coin. Is the rim perfectly even, or does one side appear slightly wider? Even a subtle difference deserves another look. Because during high-speed production, blank planchets don't always land perfectly inside the striking chamber. Even the smallest shift can create an unusual strike. Every unusual strike becomes unique. No two are exactly alike. That's one reason error collectors enjoy searching through circulation. Every coin carries possibility. Now imagine opening an old cigar box passed down through your family. Inside you find dozens of bicentennial quarters, some bright, some dark, some heavily worn. One coin immediately catches your attention, not because it's cleaner, because something feels different. The drummer's details appear unusually bold. The lettering seems sharper than the others. One tiny raised line reflects the light differently. You compare it against another bicentennial quarter. They're not identical. Now your curiosity grows. You reach for a magnifying glass. Every tiny detail becomes more important. What looked like an ordinary quarter only moments ago now refuses to leave your hand, because collectors understand something that most people never realize. Extraordinary discoveries don't happen every day, but they almost always begin with someone deciding to look just a little longer. And what experts eventually discovered about certain bicentennial quarters inspired collectors across America to search through old rolls, bank boxes, family collections, and forgotten coin jars, one quarter at a time. Because the next clue may be the most surprising part of this entire story, not because it changes the way the coin looks, but because it changes the way collectors look at the coin. Every experienced collector knows one thing: the biggest discoveries usually begin with a second glance. Now, hold your bicentennial quarter beneath a brighter light. Slowly rotate it. Watch how the reflection moves across the drummer, across the torch, across every tiny star surrounding the design. The surface begins revealing details that normal lighting keeps hidden. Now move your attention toward the words, United States of America. Read each letter carefully. Then, quarter dollar. Notice the spacing, the thickness, the sharpness of every character. At first, everything appears perfectly normal, but sometimes one letter catches your eye. It looks slightly stronger, slightly different, enough to make you stop, enough to make you look again. Collectors call this the moment of curiosity, the moment when an ordinary coin stops feeling ordinary. Now examine the drummer's uniform. Look at the folds in the clothing. The drum, the drumsticks, every engraved line was cut into hardened steel years before the first quarter was ever struck. As production continued, that steel slowly changed. Thousands of strikes became hundreds of thousands became millions. Every impact placed enormous pressure on the die. Eventually, tiny imperfections began to develop, small polishing marks. Minute cracks, microscopic chips. Most were impossible to notice without careful examination, yet every new imperfection became part of the next coins produced. Those coins entered circulation. They traveled across America, from banks to grocery stores, from gas stations to family piggy banks. Most were spent. Some were forgotten. A few survived untouched for decades. And that's where today's discoveries often begin. Imagine cleaning out an old desk after many years. Inside one drawer, you find a small paper envelope. No writing, no labels, only a handful of old quarters. One of them is a bicentennial quarter, dark from age. Its once bright surface now shows decades of careful use. Most people would assume it has little value. A collector would immediately begin asking questions. Why was it saved? What did someone notice? Was it simply a souvenir, or did they see something everyone else missed? Now inspect the rim. Run your eyes around the entire edge. Does the border remain perfectly even, or does one section appear slightly different? Every unusual feature deserves attention, not because every unusual coin is valuable, because every unusual coin has a story. Now return to the reverse. Look closely at the 13 stars. They appear small, simple, almost impossible to appreciate without magnification. Yet every one of those stars was struck using tremendous force. If the die changed, even slightly, The smallest design elements often reveal it first. Collectors understand this. That's why they rarely rush through a coin. They slow down, compare one coin with another, sometimes a third, sometimes 10 more, because comparison reveals details memory never can. Now imagine searching through 500 bicentennial quarters, hour after hour. Every coin appears identical, until one looks just a little different. The lettering feels unusually crisp. The strike appears exceptionally strong. The surface shows tiny raised features that don't resemble ordinary damage. Suddenly, the search becomes exciting. Curiosity replaces routine. Questions replace assumptions. Could this be an interesting die variety? Could it have been struck from a late-stage die? Could this coin tell a story that millions of others cannot? Those questions are why collectors continue searching after all these years. Not because every bicentennial quarter is rare, most are not, but because remarkable discoveries happen only to people willing to keep looking. One more coin, one more roll, one more forgotten collection. Every search carries possibility. Every coin carries history. And every history begins with someone deciding not to walk away, because the most remarkable part of the bicentennial quarter isn't its age, it isn't the drummer, it isn't even the famous duel date. It's the fact that after nearly 50 years, it can still surprise people who thought they had already seen everything. And just when collectors believed no modern American coin could surprise them again, another coin quietly entered circulation. A coin that looked completely different from every dollar Americans had carried before. At first, people rejected it. Many confused it with a quarter, others spent it as quickly as they received it, but decades later, collectors began seeing it through completely different eyes. And that's where our final story begins. A story that confused an entire nation, not because the coin was rare, not because it was made from silver, but because millions of Americans didn't know what to think when they first saw it. This is the 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar, the first circulating United States dollar coin to feature a real American woman. At first, people expected it to become the future of American money. Banks received them by the thousands. The mint produced millions. Businesses prepared for a new era. Everything seemed perfect until something unexpected happened. People didn't reject the design, they rejected the size. The coin was too close to a quarter, too similar in color, too similar in appearance. Many people confused it with 25 cents. Cashiers made mistakes, customers complained. The dollar quietly disappeared from everyday use. Millions of coins ended up inside bank vaults. Others were forgotten in desk drawers, coin jars, family collections, and old safety deposit boxes. Most people believed the story had ended. Collectors knew better, because history has a strange habit of returning when nobody expects it. Now, take your 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar. Hold it beneath a bright light. Don't rush. Rotate it slowly. Notice how the light moves across Susan B. Anthony's portrait. Study every detail. Her hair, her profile, the lettering surrounding the design. Every line was engraved with extraordinary precision. Every strike transferred those details from hardened steel dies onto a blank plancher. Thousands of times each day, month after month. But even the strongest steel cannot remain perfect forever. Every strike placed enormous pressure on the dies. Tiny changes slowly appeared. So small, mint workers could never stop production for every microscopic imperfection. Instead, those tiny changes became part of the next coin struck, and decades later, collectors began finding them, one coin at a time. Now look carefully beside the date, then examine the mint mark. Is there a PAD or an S? That tiny letter tells part of the coin's journey. Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. 3 different mints, 3 different production histories, 3 different possibilities. Now move toward the words liberty. Then, in God we trust. Read each letter slowly. Collectors never rush through lettering, because lettering often preserves clues. Long after other details have faded, does one letter appear unusually bold? Does another seem weaker? Do tiny raised marks catch the light differently? Sometimes it's only the angle. Sometimes it's the beginning of an important discovery. Now flip the dollar over. The reverse design immediately captures your attention. An eagle descending toward the moon, its wings stretched wide, an olive branch held tightly in its claws. Behind it, the silent surface of the moon. Above, the darkness of space. Around the edge, the words, United States of America $1. It isn't just a beautiful design, it's a reminder of one of America's greatest achievements. The image was adapted from the insignia of the Apollo 11 mission, every tiny feather, every crater. Every engraved line required incredible precision. Now imagine those dies striking millions of dollar coins, hour after hour, day after day. Tiny imperfections slowly began appearing. Most were impossible to notice without careful examination, yet every imperfection left another clue, another fingerprint, another chapter in the coin's history. Collectors understand something most people never consider. Every coin tells 2 stories, the story printed on its surface and the story hidden inside its manufacture. The second story is usually the most fascinating. Now imagine helping a relative clean out an old house. Inside a forgotten drawer, you discover a small cloth pouch. You open it. Several Susan B. Anthony dollars slide into your hand. At first, nothing seems unusual. Then one coin catches your eye. Not because it's shinier, not because it's older, because one tiny detail refuses to look exactly like the others. Curiosity takes over. You compare it with another $1979, then another, slowly. Small differences begin appearing. The lettering, the strike, the tiny design details around the eagle. Questions begin forming. Was this struck differently? Was a working die beginning to wear? Is this simply another ordinary dollar, or something worth investigating further? That single question has inspired collectors for decades, because remarkable discoveries rarely happen by accident. They happen because someone stopped, looked closer, and refused to ignore what everyone else overlooked. And perhaps that's the greatest mystery of all. Not how many coins the mint produced, but how many extraordinary stories still remain hidden inside ordinary American pocket change, waiting for the next curious collector to find them.